All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble. Of course, I've got some chicken noodle soup actually cooking on the stove right now, so the smell is delicious. I might keep it a little bit short just to make sure that the soup doesn't burn. Of course, you don't add the noodles in quite yet. You add those in at the end. Otherwise, they're going to fall apart, basically. Got some good noms and lots of weird news today. We'll be starting out talking about Larry Sinclair's claims against Barack Obama, that he sucked his dick while smoking crack with him, basically. I've got some things to say about this. While it's a funny joke, I remain skeptical on that one. Also, India has officially renamed itself Bharat as far as the G20 is concerned, I suppose. And of course, that's the Hindi name for the country. We'll be talking about that because I still see some people claiming that the people of Bharat or India, whichever, don't have the right to call their own nation what they want to call it, or that the government there, which is Hindu nationalist, basically doesn't have the right to do what it wants, even though it seems to be fairly praised by the people. When we're talking about Biden's new student loan handout, his $500 billion plus plan, actually, that's potentially going through. The Republicans have obviously, and a handful of Democrats have offered a different solution that makes a lot more long-term sense, although it's still not 100%. It's like at least you're making progress as opposed to simply saying, fuck it. You don't have to pay the capital on your student loans. Don't worry about it too much. As long as you make these new minimum payments, we'll eventually forgive all your student debt anyway. Well, that's wonderful. See, the problem is people that didn't go to college have to be saddled with that particular fiscal burden in the form of inflation and or taxes. It's not really fair when you think about it. Somebody who decided to go to tech ed and become an electrician or something like that and didn't need loans and put themselves through that school, or they apprenticed, or somebody who decided, I'm going to make $60K a year driving a truck or something like that, has to pay for somebody who took a women's studies degree. Not a fan of that. I may have gone to UVM and I may have dealt with student debt myself, but I don't begrudge anyone else the right to their own money, and I don't ask it of them. That's why I paid off my student loans lock, stock, and barrel earlier this year. I don't want Joe Biden's forgiveness. I'm not interested in taking money from somebody else unless I'm earning it by selling something of value to them, a good or a service. Well, then, please, link in the description, by the way, cross-platform. You can buy merch, you can buy books from me, and all sorts of stuff. I definitely appreciate the income. You can also donate to me on Patreon or Subscribestar if you want to, but you should be in control of giving that money to me for something that you feel is of value. I don't want a handout from the government anyway. You give $10 to the government for a fucking program, and like $8 gets actually dispensed to the people that need it, so the government's just embezzling at every possible juncture anyway. And that's, by the way, that would be high efficiency for government. Timothy Finch, you see Kamala telegraphing taking over from Joe. That's not entirely what she was saying, actually. If you listen to the entire clip, non-edited for lack of context, you'll find that she's just saying, I don't expect Joe to croak or anything, which secretly she does. But, a vice president needs to be waiting in the wings just in case. So actually, that's innocuous. That's why it's not in the news docket. Zyle000. India is just trying to rename in an attempt to escape the designated street shitting meme, like how Comcast renamed Xfinity because their customer service was trash. Well, Bharat actually has been a co-name for India the whole time and actually was used some time ago. The one thing I will point out, I'll get it more into this, is that actually the term India doesn't come from the British colonial period. That's what they're alluding to because it's the more recent colonial period. It actually comes from ancient Greece. It comes from Herodotus, actually. Michael Greco. In your opinion, why do many Dems and leftists support the Ukraine war? Do they view Russia like the U.S. with Iraq? Is it due to propaganda? I pick the latter. It's due to the recency bias that people have. All of the other proxy wars that we've been involved with, retrospectively, they say, that was a bad idea. Don't worry, I was never for it to begin with. But the one that you're currently fighting, all of a sudden people are gulled into supporting it. It's happened many times before. By the way, we have chats over on Rumble. I always read out a few of the chats regardless there to incentivize people to use the platform because Things are really cooking up on Rumble lately, actually. Morbidly obese. Think for yourself, you idiots. Spaz out. Clanker Thumper Thursday. Misfit Noof Clank from Newfoundland. I want to see Newfoundland sometime. And Capitanium says good morning. Sigil Stone weighing in with the first super chat over there on the day. Morning, Sticks. Get that video of the shitted in plane I sent you? Yes, I saw the short clip of the diarrhea shits. It did look formidable. And why are the rich so determined to bulldoze the economy? Doing so would make them not rich anymore. They'd lose everything. No. I've explained this. The super rich don't care about the U.S. economy. They don't care if the U.S. even fucking exists. Their diversified investments are all over the world. All of these companies, governments, etc., are partnered together, so they make bank no matter what happens. They would crush the United States before they'd see it go populistic, which is what they're actually trying to do at this particular juncture. Anyway, it's not like the United States will disappear or anything like that. It's just that your wealth will disappear. Most of you don't have hedge funds and piles of bonds and things like that like they do. Sinister Minister, Deep State loves war, in bed with military-industrial complex, Libya, Iraq, Yugoslavia, Ukraine. Yeah, and Afghanistan, and other adventures that we've had recently. Not a bad account. Obama, the first gay president, is stunning and brave. I did like the Krasenstein response. I can't remember whether it was Brian or Ed, is like, well, I don't think that Obama's gay, and I don't either. I'll get into this really quickly with the Tucker story. It would make him more likable if he was. And I pointed out, why would being gay make a person more likable? Unless are you telling something about yourself? Because that's the only thing that I can consider it. Anyway, Tucker Carlson did have a bit the other day. He had another episode. Episode 22. Larry Sinclair says he had a night of crack cocaine-fueled sex with Barack Obama, and that Obama came back for more the next day. Ooh la la. Assess for yourself. Here's our interview. Now, I have a number of problems with this. On the surface, I'll say one thing up front. I am very, very skeptical of people who make claims that are big. It's actually the opposite of the general public. Tell a lie that's big enough and most people will actually believe it. Little lie, they'll be skeptical. Something totally out there, all of a sudden people are eating from your hand. That's how cults form sometimes and things, and organized religions, etc. When somebody makes a big claim, they claim that the former president of the United States is presumptively bi, not necessarily gay, or just, a horn dog in general. He wanted to get his dick sucked, and he smoked crack while he was doing it. We know that Obama did use coke. That's canonical. He's admitted to that. He used cocaine when he was in college. He smoked weed and so forth. This was actually a selling point to the millennial voters back in 2008. It's like, well, yeah, I smoked weed and I inhaled. That was the point. It was a slap at the Clintons at the time, which was actually pretty goddamn funny. One thing about Obama that I did like is that when he did get in a jab, it tended to be humorous. So at the very least, it was a little bit less dour than the Biden presidency or something like that. With Biden, the only comic relief is taking bets on whether he's going to fall down or up the steps on Air Force One the next time. But they've got him going up the short steps now. A short bus Biden has to use the short ones because they're afraid for his life and his livelihood. Tucker is getting a lot of lashback about this for even platforming Larry Sinclair. And that's because he's made these claims before. I watched through the whole thing. I didn't see any evidence whatsoever. I saw basically, hey, here's my claim. I sucked Barack Obama's dick. That's basically the whole clip if you watch it. So an individual who was apparently on drugs claims that he screwed Barack Obama on these two different occasions. But there's nothing more than that. Basically, unless you have bias and you assume that Obama is into weird shit, the Michelle Obama's actually a man. He's Michael Obama. Barack Obama was clearly bi or clearly gay or something. We know he did drugs, but I mean, the average cocaine user doesn't suck a dick, especially when they've already entered into politics. I'm very skeptical of these claims for the same reason that I'm skeptical of claims against Trump that come from people like Stormy Daniels or Jean Carroll. I would note that those are litigated and it's accepted by the legal system, whereas claims against Obama are stonewalled. To Sinclair, I would say something quite simple. If you have further evidence of this, if you can actually justify what you're claiming, people might find it interesting. But then we run into something else, at least in my opinion. I don't give a goddamn fucking shit if Barack Obama got his dick sucked while he was on crack back in the 2000s. He's not in office. He hasn't been for a while. He's the de facto leader of the United States, I suppose, through his proxy, Joe Biden, at least in part. But it's not an elected office. It's more of an unofficial advisory capacity, I suppose. Advice, as in, here's what George Soros and Klaus Schwab want you to do. Do it, Joe. He's not in office. I consider this to be more of a distraction than anything else. Why don't we talk about the porous border, about the uptick in crime? Why don't we talk about the uptick in homelessness? Why don't we talk about the shitty diplomacy that we're conducting with Ukraine? Things that matter, things that are number one contemporary, and things that impact someone else's life. If Obama got his crack smoking dick sucked by some weirdo, 20 years ago, that doesn't affect me in any meaningful way, shape, or form. It's funny. If you can prove it, at the very least, it's hilariously interesting, but it has nothing to do with politics or public policy or any of these other things. I'd point out that Barack Obama, until the bitter end, was basically a civil union Democrat, so possibly ideologically cheapening the story a little bit further. I'm not going to believe this without further evidence, for the same reason that I don't believe any of the bullshit charges against Trump or anyone else under the sun until there's actual evidence. I see claims about content creators, politicians, magnates, diplomats, et cetera, activists, everything under the sun online all of the time. The only reason that people are lending this credence is because of pre-existing claims against Obama. But there's no proof of it. And it's therefore not interesting, in my opinion. It's basically just a distraction to keep you from talking about, hey, maybe we should organize a ballot harvesting campaign. Maybe we should go knock on some doors in our neighborhood. We're in a swing state and a few thousand votes might make a difference. It's to get you bogged down, and also, in my opinion, in part, to make MAGA fans especially, and Republicans in general, look like conspiracy theorists. Well, here you are believing this dude who smokes so much crack he's missing his 4 front teeth. Lol, ha ha ha, you're basically a moron. And you would be a moron if you fixated on it for very long and didn't do something more productive. Again, hilarious if true, amusing story, interesting Tucker segment. There's nothing wrong. I don't have a problem with him platforming Larry Sinclair or anything like that. But I mean, you need more meat on the bones there, or meat on the bone, so to speak. Lev Polyakov, good morning, Sticks. While the cats don't get along with each other, do they get along with your daughter? Also, favorite petting zoo animal? I like the goats. Yeah, they've never done anything pernicious. Occasionally, she's been able to pet them briefly. They tend to be more afraid of her than anything else. But yeah, they get along with her to the extent that they don't attack her or anything like that. Gristle Lumps, I choose to believe it. It's just as plausible as Trump's pea mattress story. That is the other part of it. There is a hypocrisy in the reporting. This is considered a conspiracy theory, baseless, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, the Steele dossier stuff was taken seriously for years. That's the only interesting political element of the story. But as far as that goes, I literally couldn't care less about whether Barack Obama, had his pee-pee sucked, back in the 2000s. Doesn't affect me in any way. SP Elite. Obamaniqua, probably not a glizzy gobbler, but I'll go along with it. Kamala probably is, though. We know that she did that. Also, Biden walked out of the Medal of Honor ceremony today, too. I did see that, although that doesn't seem to be an unprecedented behavior, so I let that particular issue go. Ashley, Sticks is right. This is pure distraction. Why are we talking about a president who ran in 2008? Because things aren't going good for old Joey. Yeah, it is a deflection from Joe Biden's own failures as well. People aren't talking about Joe Biden stumbling through his words or something like that. They're too busy talking about the Tucker piece. Nick Burgett. Hey, Sticks, can you shout out my app, Fart Simulator? You can fart to your heart's content with one tap toot mode or heart your favorite farts. iOS version coming soon. Sounds interesting. If people are into fart humor, I guess you've met your man. Aussie's Robots, Obama, Gillum. I see a blackmailable pattern. Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but the thing is, until I get further evidence beyond, hey, I'm claiming that this happened and I happen to know a person who was whoring around in Paris at one point, that's not enough for me. That's not a scandal. It's tangential evidence at best and nothing more. If I went by tangential evidence at best and nothing more to inform my reality, I would think that Donald Trump was an evil, butcherous dictator, the next Adolf Hitler, who was constantly off the wall and off the chain and was currently plotting to take over the United States. Well, I'm going to what's good for the goose is good for the gander in this case. The Patriot Cairo, climate change. Let's get Bill Gates to clear cut 70 million trees to solve the problem. Trees absorb all the terrible carbon. The left is anti-tree. Yeah, I talked about that a few days ago. It's like, just use terra preta, dude. Use an electric charcoaling machine and pump it into the soil. Most of the world's soils are carbon poor. You'll need a lot less fertilizer. But here's the thing, that wouldn't make any money. The fertilizer companies would lose everything. Half of them would go out of business. If people understood proper soil nutrient balance and the carbon nitrogen balance in soil that's been so distended for the last 100 years of mechanized farming, well, yeah, a lot of people would lose their jobs, and that doesn't make you campaign donations. Michael Greco sent $300. Thank you, my dude. An old trope, but how is government any different than the mafia aside from the fact that it's legal? It's not. It has protection rackets. Everything is enforced through threat of violence and confiscation. They have capos, street thugs. They have their own rituals and use the guise of charity and religion to maintain power. About the only difference is that occasionally people attempt to reform that government. Kind of hard to reform a mafia movement. You'd probably end up getting killed if you tried to do so. Other than that, no, there is no huge difference. I would say that the mafia doesn't operate under the kind of legal constraints proper for government, so maybe that's a difference. But I mean, what are we seeing right now? The government has slipped its leash completely. They're not operating under the proper stringencies. We see persecution right now legally and in the legislative sense, laws being passed, etc., that are clearly unlawful. They don't even pay attention to their own rules. I suppose at least within the mafia, there's at least family values. You know, you try not to shit on your own family. You know, you don't, slaughter your grandma or somebody like that. Hell, the mafia might be more honest than the government at times. Let's look at the Al Capone era and bootleggers and things like that. The government gets away with murder because it can legalize the murders that it commits. The mafia has to bribe somebody in order to do that. Okay, there's your difference. Hiro Sanishiban, what are your personal favorite edited works? Also, opinion on the hypothetical idea of ending 100% of foreign aid. What would you do with that money for America? At this time, because our budget's not in order, I would end all foreign aid. I would say foreign aid is fine, but it should be tied to having a balanced budget in which you don't have runaway inflation. If the inflation is growing a bit, but it's pacing behind wages and shit like that, that's fine. There's foreign aid in there. Part of a military package for an actual direct ally. If the UK gets invaded or something. Okay, that's fine. That's not happening right now, though. The aid that we're giving to other countries, supposedly for development, is just a weapons offset anyway, and a lot of it is us shipping older weaponry to other nations. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to sell that weaponry. If the United States had sold $100 billion of weapons to Ukraine, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Why don't we at least make a return on investment? At least do like a lend-lease thing. Hey, if you win this war, then you can pay us back over the next 100 years because that's how long it'll take. Okay, you got a return on investment to some degree. Go ahead and give them the weapons. I don't believe in gifting them to anyone unless we're going to gift them to the American people. Why don't we take those older gen tanks and shit like that and raffle them off? Why don't we have a nationwide lottery? Here's your chance to win a whole crate of M16s. Here's a national lottery. You pay $5 in and you get a chance to win a crate of grenades or something like that. That's what we should be doing. It'd be fun. The militia would be more well prepared. We can keep the weapons in the United States. I fail to see the problem with it. As far as my favorite edited works, I happen to be fond mainly of the ones on folk medicine. I think those are my favorite overall. That and the fortune tellers. I like those. Sigil Stone with the crackhead claiming he sucked the president's dick. All Tucker needs now is the live audience yelling, Tucker, Tucker, to complete his transformation into Jerry Springer. Yeah, it's like, who gives a fucking shit? Okay, let's say that, how has the world changed? Let's say that he's proven to be bisexual or even gay, and he smoked crack and had his dick sucked. What does it change? Literally nothing. Absolutely goddamn nothing. But what Biden does every day in his dysfunction changes things. Jason of TGA. If it's all a distraction, and I agree most probable, then who is doing the distraction and why? The usual gang of idiots in the Uniparty. Wasted Bonehead, good morning from the grave. Why is there a hornet's nest on my tombstone? Not complaining as I barely have any skin left. Just curious. I think Sigil Stone might be responsible for that. He's acting up again. The Patriot Cairo, you can thank Monsanto for chemical raping our soil. Oh, it's not just Monsanto. It predates that. The very act of chemical-based fertilizers in their use in non-rotary farming has destroyed a lot of the soil. Used to be people would rotate crops. There was composting, etc. The only high nitrogen fertilizer originally was guano, actually, which is extracted under the Guano Islands Act in the United States. The United States still owns a bunch of islands simply because birds shit on them for 1,000 years. Little known fact. Look up the Guano Islands Act if you don't believe me. It's an interesting idea. We still claim technical control of an island off the coast of Haiti, actually, Navassa Island, which used to be a guano island. There was a slave revolt there at one point. Haiti claims it because of territorial proximity and things like that. Interesting subject. I mean, you can get lost for hours reading just wiki articles on the Guano Islands and things like that. Yeah, it's not just Monsanto and its monoculture desires. Bastard and cunt. Sup, Sticks? Thank you for your support for United Ireland. British still occupy the North. Yesterday announcing no accountability to victims. I'm ambivalent on that subject. I think, you're in the British Isles. You've been civilized for a long time. Can't people fucking get along at some point? I mean, the sectarian conflict in, Northwestern Europe isn't really necessary now, is it? Ozzy's Robots, you mentioned Wi-Fi appliances in your Liberty Safe video. Most cars are now getting over-the-air Wi-Fi updates. Talk about hackable assassination tools. Yeah, why do you think that my car is from 2006? Scabrous Wretch. Hey, Sticks, assuming Orange Man manages to Grover Cleveland in 24, what crazy shit will the establishment try and have the current steward push through? Edicts and legislation before his return. Oh, that's a hard one. The problem is he doesn't have the will of the House. He's probably hamstrung and can't. So they'll try to push through more student loan debt stuff, canceling drilling leases for oil and gas, things like that, attacking the economy. They'll try to weaken the understructure of the economy before Trump comes in, if that happens. Sinister Minister, have you seen the band Nuclear Power Trio? 3 guys wearing Trump, Putin, and Kim Jong-un masks playing some great music. I did. I actually saw that the other day. Somebody linked me. Michael Greco, I enjoy your MedWorks. Your BitChute video recently about the WHO and alt medicine, you said you didn't know much about osteopathy. In the US, it's not different from MDs. They're called DOs. I'm one and an ER physician. You should look into its history. Oh, you're a physician. Good on you. So you save people's lives. Well, that's noble. No wonder you're donating so much, by the way, you're a doctor. I'm going to read up more about osteopathy. I did briefly skim over it after I made that video, but I would like to know more about it. I also support herbal medicine, an alternative treatment. I can't say too much more, I think, on a YouTube live stream. Like, disclaimer, I'm not claiming that you can cure AIDS by taking thyme oil or something like that, but it's definitely an interesting subject. The plethora of literature available on the subject of herbal medicine, especially from the 19th century, is so vast you couldn't read it in a lifetime. Like, if I were to take all those books, it'd fill this house several times over. So good luck with that. Let's see. Awesome Diesel. Electric cars with diesel generators in the boost. Yes, I've actually seen a picture of somebody who had that sort of rig. They had an electric car, and right on the back on the tow cable, they had like a little generator just in case they ran out of fuel. Well, their fuel being electricity. Next news story. Why a G20 invite calling India by its Sanskrit name is ruffling some feathers. Oh, they're sad. some of the G20 members and other diplomats and so forth are upset about the fact that the people of India have decided to call themselves Bharat, which was already a co-name for their nation to begin with. No, I feel so sorry for them. It's like if a nation, by and large, let's say in India's case, India is led mainly by Hindu nationalists at this point. Modi's people are kind of softcore Hindu nationalists. There are other more hardline groups, by the way, other sub-movements. They have decided that they want their nation, presumptively, we're not sure that this ends up becoming a fully official thing, to generally be referred to as Bharat. Now, they preface this on saying we want to rid ourselves of British colonialism. If you were conquered by another nation and now you've become a power greater than that other nation, it does make sense to break free of that particular stain. But it's really not about that, because the term India comes from the term Indus, as in the Indus River, and dates back to antiquity, long before the British had an empire, long before anything really was going on in the British Isles. The fact that they're, though, misconstrued for political reasons, that's the pitch to the people of India, or Bharat rather. The fact that they're sort of misconstruing the timeline as far as the usage of the term India doesn't really matter, though. If the people of the nation and its elected government would rather use a different term, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states, the country's constitution states. It's in your constitution. The term's been interchangeable for decades anyway. The British weren't the first to use the colonial term India, but it's why does it matter? They have the right to call their nation whatever the fuck they want. It's like, imagine you've got a nation, it's a rising power, it's got nuclear weapons and and power and a huge navy and everything else, and other nations are bitching about the fact that you've decided that you want to call yourself something different because you don't like the old terminology for your nation. Canada says, well, that has British colonial, overtones. We're going to call ourselves the Maple Federation or something like that. Well, I mean, who the fuck cares if the people there, overwhelming support? I didn't see this kind of ire when New Zealand changed its flag. Now, did they? They were trying to get away from a colonial ancestry under British rule. They decided to change their flag to that fairly good-looking one that's like black and white with the leaf or something on it. And I didn't see any outcry other than from a handful of New Zealanders that have, some British loyalty. I didn't see such a reaction from diplomats and things like that over a G20 summit now, did I? It's rather telling what people get angry at. SP Elite. Biden looking at his watch is an old story. Are people just taking notice of that? Most infantry folks besides brass don't really want to meet him. Yeah, I mean, if I was like some storied veteran from Korea or Vietnam or something, I wouldn't even bother accepting it. Send it in the mail. I don't want to be on stage with you. Who gives a fuck? It's a piece of metal that I would end up selling on eBay anyway. Hey, it's a real Presidential Medal of Honor. Should fetch at least a couple of dollars, considering that the person who signed the paper that goes along with it is Joe Biden, maybe a little bit less valuable than one given by a real president like Donald Trump. Mr. Avila, if Epstein's clients storm the Capitol, would they get time? Nope. That's the whole point. Alan Smithy, New York City mayor says they can't take any more immigrants. Sucks to be them. I heard that in Rutland, my hometown, my mom emailed me the other day and was talking about how one of the hotels there had been converted actually into a place for the homeless at this point because the problem's gotten so bad. At least it's not illegals. Well, some of them I'm sure are. There are 2 homeless encampments. There's also another hotel got converted into an old folks shelter. Rutland is falling apart. I mean, so there are like 2 hotels left in a city that used to be the second largest city in Vermont, had a reasonable economy. It had some positives to it. Apparently there's shootings all the time. Then my sister emailed me a few days before that and was like, oh, we're on our 3rd shooting of the year and we've heard all of them. Oh, I'm so happy about the fact that my niece is being raised in such a safe environment. So fuck the government of Vermont and fuck the government of the city of Rutland. You failed completely through your liberal complacency. King of Biltong. Good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Free shipping for your biltong, sticks, tumblers, and t-shirts on antonsusa.com and landofbiltong.com. New websites and a sticks-only merch section coming soon. #ClankNation. Wasted Bonehead. Could I get a sponsorship, Anton? I'll give a shout out for free biltong. Pinky promise. You're a zombie. You're only supposed to eat brains. Odds Bodkins. Il Sarto. Beau Biden locked up Larry Sinclair as AG of Delaware. Could possibly be held over Barack's head to make Joe VP. So there is more to it. Yeah, maybe more to it. I'm going to need a little bit more evidence on my end. Next news story. Biden plans even bigger student loan handout, dumping the bill on you. Of course, a very unbiased title from Fox News. They don't prop up Trump anymore because they've sold out and become controlled opposition, but they are still willing to keep up appearances by bashing Joe Biden. In the wake of the original student loan debt forgiveness thing, the new one is $559 billion with a B dollars, which is quite a lot. The idea is that if you're making the new minimum payments, which will be far lower, you're not even going to pay off your capital, not even close. If you're making those payments, then at some point in the future, you'd qualify for your debt to just be expunged. It's not legal. It probably won't hold up to judicial purview. And the whole point, the reason they're trotting it out now is so that the Supreme Court maybe strikes it down before Election Day, thus making the Republicans and the evil Trump MAGA Supreme Court look like they don't care about the poor people. It's a ruse. He doesn't expect this to hold up. The concept is counterbalanced by a CRA resolution, actually, which would block this and impose different ideas. For instance, creating a better schema so that students, this is Republican sponsored, but does have some bipartisan support, so that when a student signs up for loans, potentially, they're told about their likely return on investment based on what they're majoring in, which can or cannot be helpful. For instance, I originally went into plant bio. I quickly swapped it out for anthropology and English and poli-sci to an extent, studying religion as well. And so there's a differential. So that's one aspect it probably wouldn't fully solve. And the idea that they would have to know, like, here's your expected monthly payments. Here are the options should you default. Here are the repayment plans that are available. It would simply give the consumer more information about the system. Speaking for myself, as a first-gen college student, I didn't have any near relatives I was in regular contact with that ever went to college. My dad attended a few courses in the Marine Corps, and that was it. My mom graduated high school. She became a mother, and my grandparents didn't go. I think one of my grandparents, I think he took a few technical courses, but he never went to like UVM or something like that. So I was going in blind. And so I had no clue what I was doing. And I'm like, okay, I signed this promissory note. They're giving me money. I'm expecting to graduate and I'll get a reasonable job and I'll be able to pay it back. But they never told me like expected monthly totals or anything like that, or gave me any form of guidance whatsoever. And for students that are especially first gen and not really hip to the educational system because of that, it can be a pitfall, especially if you're in exactly my generation. We were all told that we'd be making six figures out of college with a handshake if we just went to college and got decent grades and got a bachelor's. And that didn't happen for the average millennial now, did it? It was effectively false advertising. I do support the counter plan here to make sure that people know more about the process, know more about the repayment options, how much you will be repaying, your expected income in a field where you qualify based on what you're choosing for a degree or something like that. I support that. Consumer information is important. What I don't support is inflating the currency or taxing people more to pay off the student loans of people who went to college when a lot of the people that would be paying into that chose not to go to college, weren't fiscally able to afford college, or already paid off their loans, myself included. I already paid off 100% of my student loans. I don't have any debt right now. And I'm very happy about that. I'm privileged to be in a position where I was able to do that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bragging or anything like that. But asking a person who already paid the money off to pay money towards anyone else's student loans is bullshit, especially when a lot of those people don't even have degrees. I don't have a degree. I dropped out of UVM. I was almost graduated, overdosed, couldn't deal with the stress, dropped out and became a YouTuber for a living. I find this very, very intriguing that I still managed to succeed. The part of that was very hard work. Part of it was admittedly dumb luck and being in the right place at the right time. Anyway, no, it's not fair to ask some trucker with a 10th grade education to fucking pay off somebody's women's studies degree. It doesn't make any sense. So Joe Biden grifts again. It's not that I'm surprised, but The Patriot Cairo. As a chiropractor, I've worked alongside osteopaths. Historically, both believe in mechanical integrity of the spine, as derangement of the spine leads to reduced synaptic potential and inflammation. Noon, Tarl. Ukraine are now drafting women into the army. Can we sue for peace now? Can NATO calm down with their support? It's over, right? It's not nearly over. In the end, I suspect there will be a stalemate and diplomacy will finally kick in after maybe another 100,000 people die or something. Great victory, isn't it? Alan Smithy. Good morning from Barack's Barracks of Blowjays. Free shipping on hand jobs with promo sticks. Hashtag Wank Nation. Viking Woman 1988. I am seeing 1,000 mods and Freedom Hawk at Stone Church in Brattleboro, Vermont tonight. Brattleboro has revived nicely after COVID. Clank, clank. Brattleboro was never particularly nice. I've been there many, many times. It's probably better than Rutland at this point, though. Swamp Donkey. The courts told Texas to remove the newer border barriers. However, Texas shouldn't listen to them since the feds are not interested in stopping the invasion. Yeah, if I were Abbott, I would command the Texas Rangers and shit to step in, and I would just ignore the order. I say, oh, okay, go ahead and sue the state. Yeah, that's fine. That's perfectly all right. Awesome Diesel. Will the megalomaniacs leave people alone once they get down to 500 million people? That's their number, right? Yeah, but the Georgia Guidestones got blown up. Haha. I don't think they ever caught the perp either. King of Biltong. Brian's Biltong for the bonehead. Maybe we can barter. He can only if you make it with brains. You have to air dry some brains, I guess. Awesome Diesel. Black Corp says, shout out to Rukshan Fernando here on Rumble if you're interested in what's going on in Australia at the moment. Independent journalist. Sigilstone. Just ordered myself some more Biltong, and I've got a new product idea. Bone Biltong. Come here, Bonehead. We've got some new uses for you. The man behind the screen. Good morning, Sticks and Clankers. Chapter 3 of The Giant Shadow goes live on my stack at 12 PST today. If you like spooky dark fantasy, it's well worth the read. Tales of Calamity and Triumph.substack.com. Wasted Bonehead. Sticks, the government wants free indoctrination, and no place is more indoctrinating than college. State-paid women's study degrees coming soon. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely more leftoidism at UVM than outside in the real world. I like to think that I resisted that pretty well. Did vote for Barack in 2008. I guess he still was cleaning up his chin after his Larry Sinclair incident. But I don't regret it because, look at the alternative. It wasn't really that much better. Yeah, John McCain, Bomb Iran. Yay. That's, by the way, the really great way to get youth voters on board. The Agao Faces. How high is your ESG score? Sticks Fumo plush when? Mine's probably in the negative numbers at this point, and there will never be plushies. Chat Murphy. LMFAO. I have a 10th grade education, debt-free, and going to trucking school right now. Congrats. Yeah, I mean, you'll make more money than a lot of the people that did get the magical piece of paper. So I don't think that you should have to pay extra taxes or inflated prices in order for somebody who got a bachelor's degree or something. They did it. They signed the promissory note. You signed the goddamn note. You knew what you were signing. I do agree with giving potential students more information about repayment and stuff, but it's a legally binding contract. You can't expect somebody else to bail you out. Danheim, the Viking has arrived. Schau. Next news story. Mike Pence is nuts. And I'm just going to read this tweet out. And he always speaks in the third person. I talked about this morning and how fucking pathetic it is. He doesn't even know how to use the internet. His wife won't allow him to have Twitter. She's afraid. He's probably afraid too. He'll DM someone lewds or something like that. There is a rising movement within the Republican Party about whether we're going to stay on the track of timeless conservative principles or whether we're going to follow the siren song of populism unmoored to conservative principles. You repeated yourself there, by the way. That's a low effort. Stop speaking in the third person. Reread your tweets to make sure that there's grammatical flow, please. And number 3, understand populism is the future, and traditional conservatism, as you're labeling it, is really just warmongering plus corporate bailouts minus any help for the working and middle class. Populism is apparently the extreme concept that people should get what they pay for with their government, that government should represent them if they're paying their salaries, and that ultimately things should be America first if you happen to be in the United States, because that's the government that represents you. I don't see anything particularly extreme about the idea, but what Mike Pence wants is to do what Bush did. Start a war or two on credit, expand federal bureaucracy, screw the working and middle class, give a bunch of handouts to his donor class buddies, and call it a day. That's traditional conservatism since Ronald Reagan developed Alzheimer's. The last time prior to Trump that we had a president of the United States that had actual conservative values of any kind was Ronald Reagan in his first term. After that, he was compromised, again, partially because he was clearly on the cognitive decline stage. Then you have a bunch of neocons and neolibs, globalism, warmongering, etc. It's what you got in Reagan's second term, by the way, with the Contras and shit like that. Ice Mexican Sticks, what are we going to do about... I can't read that last part, I think, on a YouTube live stream. I ain't going to do nothing. I'm going to self-improve and live my life the way that I want to. My advice to everyone, by the way, drop a vice, build a skill, be easy, don't worry too much, don't get black-pilled and demoralized, not horse shit. Just do your thing. Learn how to do home canning. It's fun, and it makes food a lot cheaper and tastier. The man behind the screen, Bonehead needs to get on the college grift. State-mandated women's study degrees? How about state-mandated necromancy degrees? Raising the dead's one of the few things they do right. Yes, look at all the politicians in D.C. There's definitely necromancy in the world. So it ties into my video the other day on magic really being real. Can you really deny that people can't be brought back from the grave? Look at Feinstein. She looks like she was 6 feet under for a couple of years before they managed to dig her up. Wasted Bonehead, frickin' Sigil, you done messed up. Now people can't visit their dead relatives at the grave because they're scared of the Hornets. You done goofed. By the way, please send no more super chats because I still got a couple of stories here. We're running up on 45 and I've got a bunch of super chats to go through. Ozzy's Robots, bailing out homeowners is pragmatic, not students. Yeah, you'd be better off investing in that, although I would oppose that as well. Wasted Bonehead. Man behind the screen has the right idea. Hashtag free necromancy schooling. Awesome Diesel. Australia first. We'll have a Trump. We'll do goodly. Swamp Donkey. Conservatism needs to be forgotten. They haven't conserved anything. Playing into the Hegelian dialectics is stupid. Stop using the words that leftists make up. Language does have power over cultures. Strongly agreed. Sigilstone. Good. Graveyards are spoopy and a waste of perfectly good farmland. Saving all the dead people in a corner of town makes no sense. We need that fertilizer for crops. I'm into hardcore recycling. Yeah, Mr. Bone Stripper comes to mind. I can't remember the movie that was in. It was a mid-'80s comedy. Was it Nothing But Trouble, I think it was called? And they had the Bone Stripper there, and it was like a roller coaster ride that would literally strip your bones apart. The man behind the screen, sending Sticks one more super chat only because he told me not to. Awesome Diesel. Last? Now 10 people are going to try to send the last super chat in or something. I'll just stop reading them. People will send their money to me in vain. Next news story, why Trump must drop out. This is a Hill opinion piece by James Zareen. I'm going to let you read this one yourself, mainly. But if you go about halfway down, you'll find something absolutely hilarious. Here's why, according to this article, here's why Trump should drop out of the race. He should drop out in hopes that the prosecutorial system shows him mercy, number one, and that an incoming, likely DeSantis, Republican president pardons him regardless. He should throw himself at the mercy of the courts that are persecuting him. That's literally the pitch of this article. A new Wall Street Journal poll encourages him. Trump has the support of nearly 60% of GOP primary voters, up 11 points since April. But he should drop out anyway, despite the fact that he's preordained to win. Hey, says Trump, I'm going to suspend my campaign. Maybe the prosecutors can leave me alone. Now that I'm ceding all possibility of power and burn bridges with half the GOP, I'm going to assume that they're going to have my back when I decide to drop my campaign. That makes a whole lot of sense. Jesus, I can go through this. If you read none of these other articles, link in the description, along with all my other links at Patreon and my books, blogs, and stuff. You should buy some books. It's getting on towards Halloween, so the link is pinned at the top if you're watching on YouTube, by the way. Plenty of spooky stuff there. No worries. Ghosts and goblins and shit. The whole point of this is that Donald Trump should trust the system that is currently abusing him and has since the moment that he got into office. That's literally the point. I'm not shitting you. Read this whole article. If you read nothing else today in full, Just this one will make you, I mean, it astonished me when I read it. When I first looked at the title, I'm like, okay, this is basically like Trump can't get elected and, we're driving with DeSantis. It's not like that. It's far more crazy than that. Crazy article. Alan Smithy, raising a family is hard, but not with necromancy. Yeah, necromancy is pretty cool, actually. It'd be fun to be able to raise the dead. Can you imagine having like a squad of skeletons walking around you and everyone's all freaked out and they smell of the grave with like tattered rags on them and stuff, and how funny it would be? And now there's another Cope article here. President Glenn Youngkin, he may be the GOP's best shot in 2024. Very, very quickly here. To reiterate, Donald Trump has won the primary. There is no opponent that's capable of stepping to him. If he hasn't been stopped yet, and some of the trials are set for right before Super Tuesday, very, very conveniently, I don't think that it really matters because he probably has already won the first 4 states by then, and it'll just look like even more blatant and naked election interference. Glenn Youngkin is intelligent. Glenn Youngkin has effectively already stated he has no desire to get into the race. If he were to get in, it would be career suicide. Right now, Glenn Youngkin's huge advantage over anyone else in 2028 is he's sitting back, remaining silent, and doing absolutely nothing. Doing the opposite of what Ron DeSantis decided to do. DeSantis decided to jump the gun. He also did it belatedly and in a shitty fashion to get into the race. He's been pounded by Trump, and now his own approval is waning. His influence is waning. He's still doing an all right job as Florida governor, but he'll never be the president of the United States. Youngkin, by sitting it out, still has the ability to do so. And it does not matter what happens in 24, by the way. Let's say that in 24, Donald Trump is reelected, and he goes Grover Cleveland mode, and he does a good job, and people largely approve of him. Glenn Youngkin benefits by being a Republican. He's part of the same goddamn party. Let's say that Trump fails. He does a poor job. He gets removed from office. He dies in office, whatever the hell, things fall apart. Glenn Youngkin can say, well, I didn't endorse him. I was too busy being the governor of my state, unlike certain other people, DeSantis. Let's say that Donald Trump is not reelected and Biden is reelected, or Kamala or whatever, and they do a good job. Well, even odds. It doesn't matter. Youngkin was too busy on the state level. Let's say they do a shitty job. Well, again, Glenn Youngkin is a Republican. He has that ingrained advantage at that time. With DeSantis having probably burned the bridge on ever being able to run a plausible campaign again, 28 doesn't look great for him. Glenn Youngkin really is the star of the show. I would give a pretty damn good chance that Youngkin does run in 2028, and a pretty good chance that he wins in the primaries if he does. I think that he potentially is the next president of the United States after Donald Trump, or the re-election, unfortunately, possibly of Biden or some other Democrat. I think Youngkin would do a reasonably good job. I've been impressed by some of the things he's done and said, not by others. I like him more than DeSantis at this point. I mean, I'm semi-non-committal because I'm not a Republican. There are things to applaud there. There's still years for him to go as governor of Virginia. He, by and large, has done a reasonably good job. And he happens to have incumbency in a state that's highly competitive. Virginia leans very slightly blue at this point. If you have the candidate for the GOP is also a reasonably well-liked incumbent from the state of Virginia, that would probably tip Virginia into your hands. And in that region, Georgia's in play, the Carolinas. You could potentially have greater influence there. I think you could do worse than Glenn Youngkin. I'm not endorsing him. I'm not saying he definitely runs, and there is always the crazy possibility he does, stupidly decide to get in for 24. So far, he's shown restraint, which is exactly what he needs to do. He seems to have gotten the cue that Ron DeSantis did not get. Sigil Stone, society is unfair to necromancers. Can a guy just raise a family in peace? Ozzy's Robots, Trump might have been more effective as kingmaker. I have a feeling that he will be in 28. I have a feeling that assuming he's still above ground and he's not resting in the tomb like a wasted bonehead there, that he'll have an endorsement to make in 28, regardless of what happens in 24. A church in Scotland. Hello, I heard the Knob Creek gun thing got canceled. Is that true? I don't know. Jang Yuk, support the soft gentleman's book, What a Bigot Would Say. Interesting. Anyway, I'm going to go offline now. I thank you to the almost 4,500 people who caught this stream live. But if I don't check that soup, at some point it will start burning to the bottom of the pot, even if it's only on level 2 for heating. And I'm hungry. It's going to be the most delicious chicken noodle soup I think that I've made, certainly. And I made chicken noodle soup quite a few times. Liz loves it. It's always good. Happy wife, happy life. Make sure to learn how to cook before you get married. It's a good decision. That's about all.